Hi guys, and welcome to Drive to School Chat, where we discuss a subtopic in geography on the way to school. Now today I'd like us to talk about rivers in the upper course. Now we know that rivers flow from the source to mouth, and as they do that, they actually flow through three main courses. And the first course is the upper course, then through a middle course, and eventually to the lower course. And we know that the relief of the land, or the topography, will change as you flow from source to mouth. And therefore the topography in the upper course of the river is a lot steeper, it's a lot hillier, because near the source, obviously the river is flowing from highland areas to lowland areas. So in the upper course, we'll expect that the river is flowing through an upland area. Now, one of the things that we need to mention before we then go on to the landforms is the jobs that a river does. And that is because it's those jobs that will create the landforms that we are going to be talking about. And a river will do three jobs, and the first one is erosion. So erosion means wearing away of the land by the river, in this case, because we are talking rivers here. And the river will wear away at the land and pick up material as it wears that land away. Then the second job the river will do is that it will transport that material. So from one part of the river to another part. Then finally, the third job that the river will do is it will deposit that material. And in doing so, the river will create various landforms. Now, what landforms then are created in the upper course? And the first one that I'd like us to begin with is the V-shaped valleys. And V-shaped valleys are formed because the river in its upper course is eroding vertically. So it's cutting downwards. So it's not eroding outwards, it's cutting downwards. And as a result, you have a V-shaped valley forming because it's cutting it's eroding the riverbed. So you then have the formation of V-shaped valleys, such that the river will be flowing at the bottom of two very steep hillsides. Then the second landform is interlocking spurs. Now, the river in its upper course doesn't have that much energy. And the reason for that is that it's still very close to its source. And because it's close to its source, it will not have gained enough water from the tributaries or from this, the drainage basin to have enough water to give it more erosive power or more energy. So the river will be a lot slower in the upper course. And because of that, not much erosion can take place. So that then means that the river will bend and twist and turn in the upper course because it's going to try to avoid the areas that have got more resistant rock. So it's going to find the path of least resistance because it does not have as much energy. And that's why it's going to twist and turn in that upper course. Now that then will mean that instead of having a V-shaped valley that you can see all the way through, it will be a V-shaped valley that has twists and turns, so you cannot see all the way through. And that is what we are referring to as interlocking spurs. They are turns and twists or bends in a river channel in its upper course, where you also have V-shaped valleys. All right, so that there then is the second landform. So we started off with V-shaped valleys and then now interlocking spurs. Now the next landform is waterfalls. Now waterfalls are formed in the upper course, and we will need to know the stages through which a waterfall is formed. The first thing that we need to mention about waterfalls is that they form where there are two bands of rock, where you have a harder rock, a harder, more resistant rock, sitting on top of a softer, less resistant rock. So what will happen is the river water will flow over the harder rock, and then as it drops down towards the softer rock, it's going to splash onto that softer rock and also hit the softer rock with force, obviously, and it's going to erode it. So that softer rock that is below it is below the harder rock, is going to erode a lot faster than the harder rock that is sitting on top of it. Now, as that happens, this top rock is going to be undercut. And because it has been undercut, it's going to end up being compromised because it will have nothing that is supporting it below. And eventually with time, as erosion continues to take place below, that top rock is going to eventually collapse and the waterfall is going to retreat backwards. Now, when it collapses, all that material is going to fall to the bottom, obviously, of the waterfall, where a plunge pool will already have been formed because the water has been hitting that area with force and the rock is less resistant, and therefore a pool of water will have been created there. That water is called a plunge pool. But as you have now more material coming and hitting that particular area, more erosion is going to take place. So through the process of abrasion, so that material will scrape on that will scrape the rock in that area and cause it to erode a lot more, which means that the plunge pool is also likely to get deeper. So the waterfall is going to retreat, and as it retreats, the process will keep on repeating itself. And because it will keep on retreating, then you will have a large area that has been left where the waterfall used to be before. And that area that will have been formed where the waterfall used to be located before is referred to as the gorge. Okay, so 3 landforms that are created in the upper course of a river. The first one was V-shaped valleys, interlocking spurs, the second one, and then the third, the waterfalls. And we've talked about how waterfalls are formed. Now, the next thing we need to talk about are the physical processes that are taking place in the upper course. And the first physical process we'll discuss here is weathering. Now, we know that weathering is the breakdown of rock. So in the upper course of a river, all 3 types of weathering are taking place. So the first one here is freeze-thaw weathering, and that will happen because it's a mountainous area, and we know that the temperature variation or the temperature ranges in a mountainous area are likely to be a lot more than in lowland areas. So in the daytime, when the temperatures are above 0, water will go into cracks in the rock, and then in the night, the water will freeze because the temperatures will drop below 0. So when that water turns to ice, it will occupy 10% more space than liquid water. So that ice will then push the rock outwards, and eventually that rock is going to break up, and that is freeze-thaw weathering. Then we also have biological weathering taking place in the upper course, and that is where the roots of plants go into cracks in the rock, and as that plant grows, the roots also grow with it, and they force the cracks in those rocks to open up, and the rock will break up. Then finally, we have chemical weathering as well taking place, and chemical weathering happens when you have weak acids in the rainwater, and they cause some of the rocks to dissolve in that rainwater. So some rocks such as limestone will dissolve in rainwater that is slightly acidic, and in so doing, that rock is going to be broken down or weathered. So 3 types of weathering that are going to take place in the upper course of a river. The second physical process that will take place in the upper course is mass movement. And the first type of mass movement that is taking place in the upper course is likely to be landslides and mud flows. And that is because any unconsolidated material is likely to become saturated during periods of heavy rain and flow down the slopes, or move down those slopes, or roll down the slopes if you like. So landslides and also mud flows. However, having said that, these are very rare in they are rare in the UK. Mud flows and landslides are rare in the UK. The second type of mass movement is soil creep. And soil creep, again, is when soil that is unconsolidated on the slopes ends up mixing with water during periods of very heavy downpour of rain, and because of that, it becomes saturated and heavy and therefore begins to flow down the hill. So that is soil creep. It happens during periods of heavy rainfall. Okay, so that concludes it for this drive to school chat. Thank you very much for joining me in this journey towards excellent exam results. And if you have a topic that you'd like us to discuss on the way to school, please do let me know in the comment section below, and we shall be sure to discuss it one of these fine mornings. Okay, all the best, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.